For 10 years, Lysa Terkeurst lived under the harsh light of a very public struggle with her marriage. It took its toll on her physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and it shattered her trust.
Lysa Terkeurst is well known as a transparent author with 7 New York Times best-selling books and a popular conference speaker. Trust is an issue she's written widely about as a common theme in many people's lives, including her own. Lysa, who is newly married to Chaz, uses her latest book, I Want to Trust You, But I Don't, to help readers grow in discernment, identify relational red flags, and rebuild hope.
Please welcome back to the 700 Club, Lysa Terkeurst. Lysa, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's always a joy to get to be with you.
Well, for years, you were deceived, gaslighted. There's no way you go through something like that without it having impact. What did that do to you emotionally and also physically?
Well, it took quite a toll. You know, it wasn't just brokenness that was being done to me. It was happening inside of me. And you know, I think the thing that I had to keep holding on to was what I see today isn't going to be forever. But when you're in the midst of really awful relationship pain, especially when it's a relationship that you thought would be forever, like the marriage that I was in, it can feel like this is a life sentence. But I want to give people hope that broken trust, while it can absolutely be life altering, it doesn't have to be life ruining.
Yeah. You stayed silent for a long time. Why?
I think because I was afraid. I didn't want the weight of public opinion being invited into our very private pain. I wanted to give room for, you know, my husband at the time to be able to turn his life around, to be able to come back. I wanted restoration. I wanted our redemption story to be this beautiful coming back together story. That's what I desperately wanted. And so I kept quiet because I really wanted that story. And I also kept quiet because, Terry, I didn't know who was safe to tell and who wasn't.
Yeah. And boy, that's the truth, isn't it? I experienced the same thing in my own life many years ago. You say there's a difference between blind trust and wise trust. Talk about that.
Well, I think especially in the Christian community where we want to love unconditionally, we have to remember that we're not required to trust unconditionally. You know, trust needs to be earned. Trust is built time plus believable behavior. And you cannot repair trust that keeps getting broken. So we have to shift from blind trust, which is trust everybody with everything, to wise trust. That means using the gift of discernment, which the Holy Spirit gives us, to fill in the blanks. Sometimes what we see isn't the full story. And one thing that my counselor, who's an amazing Christian man, he told me, he said, Lysa, where there's smoke, there is a fire. Now, it may not be a full-blown house fire, but even the flicker of a candle, if you hold your hand over it, you will get burned. So our discernment is what God gives us to be able to see beyond what the facts are and to be able to really understand if something's going on, we have to investigate, ask questions, and the reaction of the other person will tell us a lot about whether it's true danger or whether this is just a trigger from past pain.
You know, I think the reason that there's such a difficulty in acknowledging those things that are happening, that are slow fires that are starting, is because once trust is broken, I mean, restoring it is just so difficult. I live near the ocean, and when there are riptides, there are red flags posted on the beach, and you talk about that in your book, and it's what we're alluding to here. You need to recognize the red flags, but then what do you do with that?
Well, the reason I listed out red flags in my book, I listed out 11 of them, and some of them are really severe red flags like immorality. This means that this person really does not want to participate in the reality that there is a definite right and a definite wrong. So immorality seems to be a really severe one. But then another red flag is irresponsibility. Maybe it's not quite as serious as immorality, but irresponsibility can create a lot of wear and tear on a relationship relationship when you're not sure you can count on the person that you love. So there's 11 of these red flags. And the reason they're so important, it's three things. Number one, it helps us identify potential pitfalls in a relationship. Number two, it could also help us identify where are the roots of distrust coming from. We feel something weird with the person, but we're not sure exactly why we feel like we can't trust them. So these 11 red flags helps us identify the roots of distrust. But also the third big thing about the red flags is it helps create more self-awareness within ourselves so that we can make sure we are fostering trust inside safe and healthy relationships.
You know, I want to get to this while we have time to, because I want to give hope to people who are in relationships that can't be fixed. Everybody's for restoration. I know you were as well, but sometimes it can't be. You're remarried now, and yet there are trigger things that come from the hurt of your past that you still have to deal with. Speak to that.
Yes, triggers are really hard because, and I alluded to it just a minute ago, sometimes when we get triggered in our pain, it feels like there's a present day threat, but sometimes when we have a lot of past trauma, it's hard to discern, is this just reminding me of something that happened in the past, creating fresh feelings right now, intense feelings, or am I really in danger? You know, our brain is wired for the confidence of knowing. Our brain is always scanning, trying to determine, are we safe? Are we okay? What do we need to do? And so what happens when a trigger hits us is we start to fear that we're not okay. And when we fear that, the only thing that I have found that works is we have to ask questions. And like I said a minute ago, when we ask those questions, the response of the other person will tell us a lot. If the other person says to us, really, we're still dealing with this, you're not over this, you're crazy, then that is such a concerning response, and chances are something's off there. If the other person's response is, you know what, because of all that has happened, of course you're feeling triggered. Of course you need to ask questions. Of course you need to look at my phone. What do you need? Do we need to talk it out? Do you need to look at something like my computer or my phone? What do you need? And when the person's reaction, when we're triggered in pain, when the other person reacts that way, that safety provides an opportunity to really build trust. Trust is the oxygen of all human relationships. You starve a relationship of trust and you starve it of vibrancy, and possibly even you starve it to death.
Absolutely. So much wise counsel in this. Thank you for taking your pain and the things that you've walked through and making all the healing you've experienced available to others. I want people to know, I Want to Trust You, But I Don't is available now. You can get it nationwide wherever books are sold. Lysa, wonderful to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.